is Marla Schultz, and I am the host of Flip the Switch. We're here on Governor's Radio every Tuesday at 4 o'clock. And basically, the whole gist of the show is talking about how humor can help flip the switch. If you've gone through some sort of tragedy, you have some sort of mental health challenges, life challenges, how humor and laughter play into flipping the switch so you can have a more positive outlook and just kick that pain to the curb. And I try not to get too political because there's so much stuff, and I think we really need to focus on the positive, not necessarily all of the negative. And that's what struck me about the fine man that you are seeing to my left. This is Herbert Murray. I met him 2 weeks ago. We were sailing on my brother's friend's Adam Fetter. It's our mutual friend's sailboat. It was a beautiful Sunday in the Atlantic Ocean. Herbert shows up. He apologized for being late because you said you were from New Jersey. And I said, well, you should apologize for living in New Jersey. I'm kidding. First time that you had been driving, and my brother Jonathan said, first time driving, how old are you? And then Adam said, Herbert, tell your story. So Herbert, why was it the first time you started driving?
Well, when I was 21 years old, I had gotten arrested for murder in the second degree, a murder I did not commit. Subsequently, I was sentenced to 15 years to life and ultimately did 29 years in prison.
For a murder you didn't commit?
A murder I did not commit.
Now, I have to say, when you told me your story, here I am, I'm like the only chick, and there's like Adam, my brother, his friend, and the kid, and I just started crying because, this has been in the news, the disproportionate amount of how Black men are imprisoned for crimes, petty crimes, marijuana, and even crimes that didn't commit. I read the transcript of your parole, and how many times were you up for parole, and how many times was it denied?
Well, I was up for parole 8 times.
God.
I was denied 7 times, and each time they denied me, that was an additional 2 years added on to the 15 years of life that I was originally sentenced to. So ultimately, that wind up, I went to before 7, so that gave me additional 14 years. And at that 8th final parole board, the information that came forth, which they evaluated, and they let me out 3 days afterwards, once that evidence was presented.
Now, reading your transcripts, I see that there was so much evidence. There was so many legitimate alibis. In fact, one alibi, and it wasn't an alibi, it was actually fact, that you were with a 30-year veteran of the NYPD. Is that correct?
That is correct. He was a good friend of my best friend. He was a cousin of my best friend. And he came to testify at both trials. I had 2 trials. And each time he indicated that had I committed the crime, he had to be my co-defendant, because on that day, that he was with me all that day. So there was no way that I committed that crime.
Now, you said he was your co-defendant, meaning was he on trial as well?
No. I had a co-defendant, but he was a friend. He was a cousin of my best friend.
Okay.
And he was just driving around on that particular day. He took me to work, as a matter of fact, on that day. And this is why he adamantly remember that day so freshly.
And you were also working in the city on that night, right? And tell everybody what the date was.
The date was April 13th, 1979. I was working with the bitter end on Bleecker Street 5 years prior to that. So in 1974, when I was 16 years, when my mom died, and I needed,
Sorry.
some work, they hired me part-time and ultimately hired me for full-time. And I was there for 5 years before I was arrested for this murder that I didn't commit.
I listen, as a chick from Long Island, I, had my fake ID, and I think I was showing up after you, unfortunately, were wrongly incarcerated. But I just remember that was one of the best places to party. And, a Long Island chick, that's what it was all about back in high school and college. Now you grew up in Brooklyn.
Yes.
And you were sharing with me how, like, what your neighborhood was like and how, so tell us about your neighborhood and the people in it and how there was a real, and the sense of community.
Yes. I grew up on the Delphi, which is the Fort Greene section of Brooklyn. Downtown Brooklyn, we like walking distance from the shopping district on Fulton Street.
You know it.
Brooklyn. It was a very diverse community. And we all stuck together, even though we was poor, but we had a sense of a community, because I could not do anything wrong without my neighbor getting on top of me, or the old lady that was at the window that looked down upon the young guys and the young girls and, boy, girl, if you don't stop that down there, I'm gonna come down there and beat you. And she will come down there and beat you and take you home. So we just had that sense of community, even though we was poor. We didn't have a lot of money, but we had a lot of love, and that's what gave us the strength that we need to progress and keep moving on to what we need to do for ourselves.
Now, you were telling me that when crack, infected your neighborhood, that's when everything went to.
Oh, absolutely. Crack was the worst drug that ever hit the Black community. Even though prior to the crack epidemic, it was the heroin, but the heroin didn't steal their morals, their principles, and values. They used to go and shoot up on the rooftop with the birds cage.
Oh, wow.
Because they had so much respect for the elders. And they used to come down, they used to act up, but when they seen Miss So-and-so came down that block, they straightened up quick, fast, in a hurry, and greet them, hello, Miss Murray, how you doing? And that's how it was. Unfortunately, when the community was attacked by the crack epidemic, all that morals, principle, values went out the windows. We didn't have that sense of community was just gone.
Oh man. You know what? When you were telling me about her on the boat, I immediately thought of Tyler Perry as Medea, like this big Black woman who just didn't take any shit from anybody. And
absolutely. And that's what the time we was living in, because my mama could be working, and if the neighbors saw me misbehaving, she will grab me and beat me, you know what I mean? And take me home, and I get another one. So I had to have that respect, not only for my mother, but for the community itself at large.
Sure. I just watched, I love going back and watching old comedians. Like, some of my favorite are the Black comedians, Bernie Mac, the original Kings of Comedy. Earthquake, I think, and it was D.L. Hughley when he was young, and Cedric the Entertainer. I just remember him, old school convertible. But we were watching Eddie Murphy and Delirious, and he did a whole bit about his mother with the shoe. And the minute he misbehaved, the shoe, and it would just like fly around like a boomerang. Anyway, other thing, which really struck me, and, we talked about this, the white fragility and the white privilege, it struck me when here we are sailing, and I was complaining, oh my gosh, this is the first time I've been sailing with my brother because I've been taking care of my mom and everything with COVID. And you said it was the first time you were on a boat and first time you were ever on the Atlantic. I mean, what was that like?
It was amazing. I mean, this was my experience. That was like, wow, you know what I mean? It's words can't even describe how, ecstatic I was being out on Atlantic Avenue. In fact, I thought we were somewhere else. And then your brother corrected me, oh, you have the Atlantic Ocean. What? So it was just amazing. It was just to be out in that space, and interacting with all of you guys and everything. And it was just an experience that I would never, ever, ever forget.
Well, listen, our mutual friend Adam, you just got to get him to invite you again. And I have to say, you really handled yourself well because my dad used to say, I mean, the Atlantic was kicking up and we were zipping along. And I think if we didn't have that little kid on the boat, we would have gone a little further. But
Right.
that was what they call a snotty gale in sailing terms, because it was white caps. And I mean, we were heeled over.
Absolutely.
And the fact you didn't get seasick and you had a good time, but it was really one of those spectacular, fall Sundays.
Yes, it was.
So, as I said, I was reading the transcript and I also read all the articles. You've gotten a lot of press on this. I read something called The Innocent Prisoner's Dilemma.
Right.
And you want to explain that?
Yes, the innocent dilemma is reference to, people who are incarcerated for things they didn't do. And it's hard to prove that, because of the systemic racism that's in the system, they just brush things off and whatnot. And I just want to, mention this. And at the same time, I was going to trial, the Brooklyn District Attorney, Eugene Gold, was also molesting a 10-year-old girl. And they gave him a pat on the back, forced him to retire. He goes off to Israel, and I subsequently get convicted for this murder that I didn't commit.
Vote against, convict you when there was such overwhelming evidence that it wasn't you. You had so many letters in your favor, which is really horrific. Now, who actually committed the murder?
Well, I found out it was my brother. But that was many, many years after I was convicted. And he subsequently came to prison and died in prison because of him messing with drugs. He was a heroin user, and that would motivated him to try to get money that night that he committed this crime, to get money so he can, him and his partner could buy drugs to get high.
Now, why do you think that then why did they nab you when it was your brother?
Because if you put me and my brother in a corner, we look very much alike. We both tall and we dark. Mm-hmm. And not only that, prior to my getting arrested for the murder, 5 years prior to that, I have gotten arrested with the neighborhood, about 4 other neighborhood that was living in the neighborhood. And when this crime happened, somebody identified one of those individuals that I got arrested at 5 years prior. So they gave a description of the person that was with him, and they went into his record. And that's how my picture came up. In that my brother and I look so much alike, they picked me.
Now, your brother let you take the rap and he never fessed up?
Absolutely not. He never fessed up. But again, yes. Well, that took many, many, many years when he got arrested. But I heard that he gave a confession to both of my sisters, but they never told me. I came home, we was on a cruise, we in another country, we just gathering and having conversation, and it just inadvertently slipped out of my older sister's mouth that my brother confessed. And I said, what? And I'm home now. And I said, what? And I asked her why she and my other sisters did not report that to me. And they felt that the system would just ignore them because they said that they was, they will be making it up. So they just kept it to themselves. But we look for that. Those individuals who are incarcerated look for things like that. You know what I mean? Because usually when someone is dying, they usually confess. They honestly confess. But they didn't understand that dynamic. You know what I mean? So that's why it was never presented at trial or to a lawyer or anything. This is way after I came home during the 29 years in prison.
Okay, but why wouldn't your sisters then, oh my God, we got this confession, and then run to your lawyer? Or why would they sit on something like that?
I have the slightest idea. They still haven't confessed that, because they
Ugh.
only say that they wouldn't believe me. They wouldn't have believed them. That's all they say. The district attorney, the courts wouldn't believe them, so they kept it to themselves. But I mean, that was the worst. I mean, I cried like a baby when I heard that all those years. I mean, come on, we look for evidence like that. And I just have to mention this. Your friend, Mr. Fader,
Yeah,
his father,
right.
the one that was so adamant. He took my trial. I got convicted, and he made it his business. After all those years, he kept me in his heart. And
Oh,
he's the one that got me out of prison. He's the one who got the second chance program, which is comprised of Brooklyn Law School, to come and visit me and have the professor represent me in court. And that's how I got out of prison. So I am so adamant and so grateful for Adam's father, Mr. Fader, who got me out of prison after all that 29 years.
so now how long, first of all, they're talking about an attorney, Frederick Feder, and Adam is his son, who's also an attorney, really principled, great guy, who
Yes.
is Herbert's friend, who is my brother's friend, whose boat we were on, and so
Yes.
on and so on and so on. But how long was Frederick, Feder fighting for you?
Well, he took it for granted that, once I do the minimum of 15 years, they would let me out. But when they didn't, and they continue to hit me with additional 2 years, 7 times, which added another 14 years, that's when he became so adamant to get me out of prison. Yes.
And where were you incarcerated? And was it, I'm assuming it was maximum security?
Oh, absolutely. I was in the maximum security like 13 years.
Ugh.
I was in Auburn, I was in Attica, I was in Clinton Correction Facility, and I also was in Sing Sing Correction Facility.
Oh, so you went on the grand tour of the worst prisons.
That you can imagine. I had seen people get murdered in prison. I've seen people get raped. I've seen guards are very abusive. I mean, they are the most abusive people in the world, because who's watching?
You mean the correction officers?
Oh yeah, they'll murder you and cover it up in a minute.
Were there any, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Because they know nobody was watching, and we was at that time of society that no one cares.
Right.
Right. It was out of sight, out of minds, but it was a lot of abusive.
Are there any good, corrections officers that really cared?
Yes, it was, and I think the majority were good. And the chosen few was the bad. But what make the majority go wrong is the code of silence.
Right.
They see their co-worker doing something that they have no business, or abusing someone, but they just can't blow the whistle because they don't want the pressure on them, because they got family they raising, they got kids they raising and everything. So they keep them to themselves. In fact, correction officers and police officers are ones who make up the highest suicidal, because of them keeping these information to themselves, that they can't even tell their husbands or their wives. They can't tell nobody. So they got to hold on to that for all those years. And this is why I believe that a lot of them become alcoholics, they be suicidal, and so on and so forth.
Wow. We were talking. Now, you said you were really angry. I saw that you had a lot of infractions. You were thrown in the shoe. You were thrown in the box for numerous times. But what got you on your path to not only go to college, because I read that you couldn't even read and write when you got into prison.
That's correct.
And then you left with a college degree. Like, was it religion? Was it a belief in yourself? What got you on the path to really, for self-improvement and to make something of yourself, even though you were in prison?
First and foremost, being in the maximum security and being in prison in general, people die. People get, killed. People get sick. The medical attention is not good. They died medically and so on and so forth. So it was so many people dying in prison. My brother died. He ultimately died in prison. So that became my fear. And I was emotional at the time. I was mad at the world. I didn't have a sense of direction, but I did not want to die in prison. So I had to change my whole way of life. So I went to school, got my GED, went to college, got my associate's degree. I was in the process of receiving my bachelor's degree when George Pataki came in there, who eradicated college all throughout the prison system. Even though the statistic indicates that if you have a education, it is unlikely for you to go back out there to get you back in prison. But
so he just said no more. What's the point? Why spend the money?
Right, exactly. What he did, he invested in more prisons.
Did you always have a strong belief in yourself?
No, I have not. No, I was not a religion person at all, but I became so fearful in dying in prison. I had to look for a recourse. I have to find something to smooth me out, because of my anger. And I tried a Muslim at one point in time, and that didn't work. Because that resulted in a gang-related thing also, you know what I mean? Because if one did something wrong, it didn't matter if it was right, wrong, good, bad, or ugly. We all protected him, even though he was wrong. So that right there wasn't good for me. And then I went to Christianity, and that's when I found my spirituality. And that's what smoothed me out, and becoming a teacher aide, became the director of a youth assistant program where the kids come in from the outside, and we give our spiel about prisons, about how important education, and so forth and so forth. Lines.
Okay, so if you're down there, and I think it's really important for people to know, because what struck me about you and wanting to be friends and was just your spirit and your smile and your positive outlook on life. Because I have a joke, I say, I was breastfed negativity. It's half empty, it's half empty. But here you serve 30 years and you're like this ball of love. And I think it's really important, where the world feels like it's blowing up, what can they do to have an outlook and a positive disposition like you?
Surround yourself with positive people. That is the key. For me, it was, people from all over the world. And being in Times Square, and they coming into an entire different country, they might want directions, they might want, where to go see things and so on. And they had accents. So my listening skill became, good, because I want to give them the information so they can enjoy themselves. So it was the people from international that helped me get the strength that I need to continue to be happy and forget my past. Not forget, but that positivity overshadow my past.
Sure. But let me just explain. You get a job and you're a supervisor what is the Times Square Alliance? What is it?
Alliance.
Okay. So if you're down there, and what he does is you set up the events, you keep the naked cowboy moving, because I heard that really pisses you off. That, Tweety Bird and naked cowboy, they're hustling the tourists. You don't like that, right?
I mean, the naked cowboy, he don't solicit money. You know what I mean? He's there just for the fun.
Okay.
And they love him, So I'm not particularly talking about the cowboy because he's a great.
I know. When I think of Times Square, I think of.
But the different characters, they sometimes get over aggressive and try to solicit. He'll got his bloomies on, and that's all he have on. And this is in the wintertime. It doesn't matter what the weather is. He is out there.
That's hilarious. Well, yes, he is out there. He is out there. So, so you wrote a book, which is, I'm jealous because I want to write a book. So you write a book. Tell us what the book is called and where they can get it.
Standing Tall in Times Square by Herbert Murray.
Standing Tall.
Yes. And I just tell my story about, my transition from prison into Times Square. After 29 years, they hired me too much. I interact with the central staff from there. They're all friends of mine. So I interact with the president, the vice president. In fact, I personally, deal with the senior vice president because he's such a great cop. And he's a former police officer.
Oh, wow.
He's not only a police officer, he was, I think, a 3-star chief. and that's my best friend in Times Square. And I love him.
So, and you're also coming out with the second book. Can you tell us the title?
Well, I didn't come up with a title yet, but it won't be Standing Tall in Times Square 2. It won't be that.
Well, what about Still Standing in Times Square?
Well, I don't want the Times Square because I want to be more or less of reaching out to the youth. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I want to capture a title so they can start reading to understand the dynamic, what I've gone through, and how it is so easy for them to get entrapped into that lifestyle if they don't watch out. And
there's some advice that you would give these young kids. And what do you see more of an uptick or more of an increase in young kids getting in trouble, regardless, Black, white, brown,
right. Well,
Asian?
The thing is with the games, when these night centers, these recreation, when I grew up in my community, we had some place to go at night.
Right.
We had night centers, where you go play basketball, ping pong, or get mentorship programs and so on and so forth. And when we left that building, we were so tired, we went home. We didn't hang out on the streets. But once they start closing those schools up and pushing everybody in the streets, and that's when everything became backward.
Tell us about the organization that you're involved in, and you're really passionate about shutting down Rikers Island.
Yes, I am affiliated with Just Leadership, who is the organization that pushing to get Rikers Island closed and try to build community, small humane facilities in the community so we can be directly involved in the rehabilitation of the kids, as opposed to Rikers Island being 100 years old on an island where the place is just deteriorating. And, they investing so much money to keep it built up where it's just not working. So every time you turn it around, they just investing, and they have to go because it's just unhumane. And the brutality of it and the history is still remain.
No, I've been reading about that. Lastly, I want to know what helped bring about more prison reform. Where would you suggest they go for more information?
There is a lot of organizations that's out there who championing this narrative to change what it is. You know what I mean? There's so many of them. I support them all.
Okay.
You know, I don't want to say just leaders.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Because that might not be your liking and be another organization. Just do the research.
Okay.
Especially nowadays, you know what I mean? When you got Black Lives Matter, they're
Yeah.
all over the place now, you know what I mean? Where they're trying to change the narrative of what society has to offer.
Well, let's, peaceful, let's hope peaceful protests stay peaceful and they don't devolve into communities being destroyed. But at least the anger is understandable and change has to happen. I want you to leave people with two things. What do you do to make yourself happy? And what makes you laugh?
Well, what makes me happy is Times Square, because again, I'm interacting with people from all over the world. And, my listening skill is so keen, you know what I mean? And I always tell my stories. And in fact, on my book cover is me standing on the red steps in Times Square. It was a Chinese guy that lived in China that took that picture. And he was traveling the world at that time. And so he took the picture and he said that when he get home, he's going to do it and send it to me. He emailed me and said, well, I'm going to go further on in doing my travelings, and I was unable to do it. But see, he did it anyway. He found a way to get that cover to me.
Aww.
And he's my best friend.
Nice.
He invited me to come visit him right before the pandemic came, and I was on my way to China.
Get out of here.
Yes,
it's a good thing you didn't go initially, but now it's safe to go. So hopefully they'll let Americans in.
And that's what he said at our last conversation. Now you can come see me.
Oh, that's funny.
Saying Times Square, because I'm in Times Square majority of my time. I'm in Times Square more so than any other place in the world. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's the people that make me laugh. It give me the energy that I need, and it give me the love.
Nice.
Yeah,
that's what it's all about, right? It's the love.
It's the love. You know what I mean? And
where is the love, people? Where is the love now? We need the love.
Yes.
Hey, Herbert, I would love for you to give a shout out. Just say, hey, this is Herbert Murray. And Herbert, it's been an honor. And everybody, if they want to find out more information, where can they go?
They can go to my website, which is hamid18757@gmail.com.
Herbert, it's been a pleasure. I will see you soon. You are an absolute, I am so glad that you're in my world, because you really, you deliver the message, and you're a beautiful man, and keep making people happy. And thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. Everybody, next week, I have great guests lined up. I thank you so much for tuning in. Herbert, mwah, big kiss.
Mwah.
Have a great day and take care, everybody.
Love you.
Love you too. This is Flip the Switch with Marla Schultz. So long.